Hi, welcome to the CBT Nuggets Linux series. My name's Perry and I'm going to guide you through the process of learning Linux. Now if you've used Linux before, that's great. We'll brush up on the fundamentals and I'll work to expand your knowledge in areas that you're not so familiar with. But if you haven't used Linux yet, that's okay too, because we're going to cover everything from the ground up. What we're going to do is in the first couple videos, we'll cover the fundamentals of Linux. Everything from logging into the system, to navigating through various menus and directories, to editing files. And we'll also talk about the history of Linux a little bit. Now some of the stuff that we cover in the first two videos, we'll cover again later in more detail, but I just want to get you going. And then in the next few videos, we'll talk about the installation process. We'll talk about some pre-installation considerations, and we'll actually do a basic installation of Red Hat Linux. In the remainder of the videos, we'll move on and go over everything from administration of a Linux system to troubleshooting problems that you run into. Now my goal in this video series is to get you familiar with Linux so that you can efficiently use or run a Linux system, whether it's in your home or at a university or a corporation. And you should also find this series helpful if you're trying to pass the CompTIA Linux Plus exam. I've made an effort to cover the objectives for that exam in an order that makes sense. We don't just go through the topics one by one like some books, but instead I'm focused on putting together a cohesive set of lectures that flow from one topic to the next. Alright, enough of this introduction. Let's get started and actually log into the system. Alright, well let's start right at the beginning just by logging into our system. The first thing that we do is just type our username, and my username on this machine's Perry, and then I hit enter, and now I type in my password. And you can see my password just shows up as a bunch of stars. That's just so someone looking over my shoulder can't read my password. Then I hit enter, and now I'm actually logging into the system. Down here you can see it says starting GNOME. GNOME is the name of my desktop environment. That just controls the look of the graphical user interface that I'm using to interact with the operating system. Now the first thing that pops up here is going to be the Start Here window. Okay, so here you can see it says Start Here, the title of the window is Start Here, and it just gives you some basic icons like just a starting point to interact with the operating system. So we can look at the programs that we can run by double-clicking on this icon here, and you can see that there's applications, that's one subcategory, there's internet programs, multimedia programs, various utilities, and you can poke around in here to see the kinds of programs that you can run through the graphical user interface. So I'm just going to double-click on Applications, and you can see the applications that come up here. AbiWord's a word processor, there's an address book and a calendar, there's an Emacs text editor that we'll talk about later in the video. gedit is a very simplistic editor, kind of like Notepad on Windows. Numeric is a spreadsheet program. Nautilus is a file manager. And the way that you would run these applications is just by double-clicking on the icon. Now another way to run these applications is by going down to this thing down here that looks like a foot. It also looks like a G. It's just kind of like the footprint of a GNOME. So for the GNOME desktop environment, you're going to have this GNOME footprint down here. You single click on that main menu item, and then you go to Programs, Applications, and now you can see all these things listed in this menu. Well, the things listed in this menu are the exact same things that are listed in this window. So you can either run these programs by double clicking on the icon in the window, or by single clicking on any of these items in this menu. It's just a different approach to do it. Okay, so let's go use the back button here to go back to the main Start Here window. And now what I want to show you is just double clicking on Preferences, what that does. Actually, before I do that, let me just show you some basics of Windows stuff in case you haven't used a windowing operating system before, which I would find completely surprising. But in case you haven't, if you left click on this blue title bar up here and hold down the left button and move your mouse around, you can move the window around. If you click on this button over here, this dash, that'll just minimize your window, and it just shows up as a box down here on the bottom. If you click on that box, then the window pops back up on the screen. If you click on this button, that will enlarge the window to full screen size, or if you click on it when it is full screen size, that'll bring it back to normal size. If you click on the X button here, that'll just remove the window altogether from your screen. It won't be there at all. I won't click on that now just because I want to use this window. Okay. If you do click on it and you get rid of it with the X, you can always get it back by double clicking on this Start Here icon on the desktop, or by single clicking on the Start Here icon down on the panel. Okay, so that's how you can get this window back if you do remove it and you want to get it back later. Okay, so let's look at preferences now, and we'll double click on that. And like I said, I'm using the GNOME desktop, and if I double click on desktop, you'll see the kind of stuff I can control there. I can control the background colors. Instead of that blue background, I could have a different color or a picture instead. I can control what's in the panel, and that's all this stuff down here. What icons are there, what programs those icons run. I can set up things about the screensaver, like how much idle time before the screensaver comes on, what screensaver does come on when it launches. The theme selector is just a look and feel kind of thing. You can play around with that if you want. And then there's the window manager I can set. So really the desktop environment in combination with the window manager is what controls the look and feel of this graphical user interface. So if I double click on this, I can set my window manager. And you can see I have the Sawfish window manager, my current one. I could change that to TWM. There's other window managers out there that you can install on your system. You know, and basically the window manager in combination with the desktop environment controls this look and feel. And you can see I can run the configuration tool for Sawfish to change the look and feel of things. I'm going to show you how to do that later a different way, so I'm just going to cancel right now. But basically, you know, this look and feel, this might throw you a little bit if you're trying to follow along on the videos. Maybe the icons look different, or maybe the selections in some menu are different. Don't let that kind of stuff throw you. That's just, you know, a product of, you know, what distribution of Linux you're using, what desktop environment you're using, what window manager you're using, and regardless of what choices you've made along the way, you should be able to follow, you know, 99% of what I'm doing in this video exactly. And if some little bit just looks confusing or looks different to you, don't think you're doing anything wrong. Just forge ahead and you know, don't worry about that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's go back another level here and see this Sawfish window manager icon. I'm going to double click on that, and now you can see all the various things that I can set in the Sawfish window manager. I can set the appearance of windows. I can set the focus behavior of windows, which just means how does the window become the active window? Do I have to click inside of it? Do I have to click on the title bar? Do I have to just move my mouse anywhere inside the window? That kind of stuff. Okay, that's what you can set by clicking on that icon. You can set the placement of windows, like where does a new window show up when you start it. Does it show up in the middle of the screen? Does it show up on the left side, the right side, the top, and so on? Okay, so basically, if you're using the operating system, you're using this graphical user interface for the operating system, and you go to use something and you don't like the way that it works, or you don't like the way that it looks, you know, look around in these icons and these folders and these directories for a setting for that, and I'm sure you'll be able to change it and make it so that it's more natural to you and it doesn't annoy you anymore. Okay, so pretty much every facet of the graphical user interface is customizable, and you just need to find the particular setting to do that. So this graphical user interface that we've seen so far here by pointing and clicking on the various icons, this stuff is getting more and more developed in Linux every day. But this is still not really the standard way to interact with a Linux or a Unix operating system, and instead the more normal way to interact with this is through a command line interface or a terminal window. So let me just minimize this window here and open up a terminal window to show you what that's all about. So I'll right click on the desktop here in some empty area, and then I'll highlight new terminal, and I'll left click on that, and now I'm opening up a terminal window. Now this terminal window, like I said, it's the more standard way to interact with the Linux operating system. What you're going to do here is type commands from the keyboard, and then, you know, hit enter, and then the computer is going to respond with some other sort of text-based answer. Okay, there's not going to be any icons or graphs or pointing and clicking. I mean, there are menus here in this window, like I can go to File and open up a new terminal window, or go to Settings and change some preferences for the terminal. Okay, but the more standard way to interact with the operating system in Linux is just by typing commands. Now you might say, well, you know, I really like graphical user interfaces. I don't want to do this age-old thing of typing commands. It seems so archaic. But really, typing commands in Linux is much more powerful of an interface than the graphical user interface. It's also more universal. So when I show you something in this terminal window or this command line interface here, that'll work in every version of Linux that's out there. Whereas if I show you some graphical user interface tool for something that Red Hat's developed, then it might not work on every system out there. It might just be a Red Hat specific thing. And I'll let you know when there's a graphical user interface tool out there. I'll show them to you when I can. And I'll also point out when it is Red Hat specific or something like that, so you'll know that it might not be available on every version out there. But everything that I do with the command line interface here, that's going to be applicable to every version of Linux out there. Another reason to use the command line interface and be very familiar with it is because as a system administrator, sometimes you're going to have to work on the system and fix things when it's in a state of disrepair, when it's kind of crippled, okay? And maybe the windowing system isn't working. The windowing system in Linux is called X Windows. So if X Windows isn't working, you're not going